So how does PC up the quality over the PlayStation 5 version? As you're seeing in these cutscene comparisons here, two more obvious ones are image quality and frame rate. Cutscenes on PlayStation 5 are locked at 30 FPS and they can run at any frame rate on PC, thus dramatically increasing their smoothness at 60 and above. Not all elements of the game, though, have been upgraded to run at arbitrary frame rates, though, on PC. A number of the particle effects still run at low frame rates like they do on the PlayStation 5, like the dust along the ground here, or some other distant particle effects at times. At times, this can make the game look a little awkward, like in the opening cutscene, when the samurai charge down the hill, the particles arcing toward the beach are awkwardly low frame rate, even though they are taking up large parts of the screen. But that is a small concession overall, and you're getting a dramatic increase in fluidity in cutscenes here, which is greatly appreciated. Image quality is also a lot better in cutscenes and gameplay depending upon your PC rig. Since the PS5 version uses what appears to be SSAO 2TX, there is a constant ghosting that can occur that is most visible in cutscenes, with the previous frame being visible in the current one. The various image quality options on PC do not have this issue. But the biggest IQ win is due to the PlayStation 5 version using checkerboard rendering and outputting at 4K, which will have a constant pixelization on surface detail or edges even. If you use DLAA on PC or just any of the DLSS modes, for example, this will thoroughly fix that up and you'll have smooth edges with fine detail. That's pretty impressive, I think, here, considering how DLSS is running at half the real internal resolution versus checkerboarding in this comparison here. Unlike Horizon Forbidden West, Ghost of Tsushima thankfully upgrades other aspects of the visuals in meaningful ways. One of the biggest is in Foliage draw, where on the PlayStation 5, Foliage draws in pretty close to the camera, so you will often see barren hills in the distance as you walk forward. PC pushes that out much further, even just at the high setting, preventing pop-in and awkward Oblivion-like distant terrain detail. Based on the comparison with PC settings, the PS5 version has a custom setting for its foliage draw. It's lower than medium for distance, but the density is similar to high for those closer tufts of grass. So it's a custom setting on PS5. On PC, this setting for foliage draw is somewhat annoyingly handled by a generic LOD setting. This also affects opaque geometry LOD as well, and for those objects like we see here, PS5 lines up with the high setting, which is lacking the teapot and more detail in the mid-distance as seen on very high. Here I wish Nixies instead had two options for LOD, one for foliage and one for opaque objects. Here for optimized settings, I recommend the high setting, which will prevent awkward draw in the mid-distance like we see on PS5, but it will also be less costly on the GPU in comparison to very high, which is only going to help the largest views in the game. Another good upgrade over PS5 is in shadow quality, where on PS5, shadows can turn quite mushy close to the camera with an obvious shadow cascade as we're seeing here in this house. On PC, you can push that up higher, and in side-by-side comparisons, the PS5 version has the same level of softness and aliasing as the high setting on PC, with very high and ultra going above. For mid-spec GPUs, I'll still recommend the high setting though to keep VRAM in check and save a bit of performance where possible. Screen space reflections are also upgraded on PC, as we can see here, with the softness and aliasing of the PlayStation 5 version being closest to the PC at high. Though due to checkerboarding, it is a blurrier resolve on PS5 than the DLSS we are seeing here on PC. The very high setting above that goes and resolves more detail with less visual. Still, I'll recommend that high setting on PC, as it will save 6% or more performance in a given scene, while not losing a lot, I feel, on average. Here I would have really loved to have seen ray traced reflections added to this port to clean up things like water specifically and avoid SSR artifacting there. After these more obvious upgrades, I will say the visual improvements on PC become harder to spot. For example, the screen space shadows on PC on the very high setting have a more complete penumbra effect on them, where the high setting, which PS5 uses, resolves them in a more dithered way. Not a huge difference though, but it can cost a tiny bit, so I still recommend that high setting on PC instead of very high. Same story with volumetric quality. PS5 here is a closest match in softness and aliasing for the high setting, yet honestly, Going above high will lead to crisper volumetrics, but they're not massively game-changing to the presentation. They cost a significant amount as well, with the high setting saving 6% over the ultra setting in a simple scene like this one, for what I would say is a small difference. So definitely use the high setting here. And this goes on. PS5 is essentially the high setting for other ones, and the high setting offers the best bang for buck in terms of performance. One area that I'm saddened to not see improved over PS5 is texture quality. Here, the game on PC will resolve the same texture quality as PS5 using the high or very high setting, which in my experience provide identical details in the game. This is somewhat of a shame, as I say, because the texture quality is the game's weakest aspect next to its insufficient indirect lighting. Many of the game's textures look kind of blurry, especially those for terrain. Another issue on PC is that the anisotropic filtering setting does not seem to meaningfully impact terrain texture quality at a distance, even when maxed out at 4K and 16x. So either AF is not working correctly or something else is happening. Either way, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, my texture quality recommendation for 8GB GPUs is to use high until you hit resolutions above 1440p, in which case you will need to go down to medium to make sure you don't see random performance drops. Another area of dubious upgrades versus the PlayStation 5 is ambient occlusion. Like other Nixie's ports, you can use other AO options here, like HBAO+, but the game's art does not seem to be designed around them, and they apply a more conservative AO to the environment. Here, I don't recommend using XCGTAO or HBAO+ for this game, as the visuals that you are getting are not necessarily aligning with the art in the game and the design there. Once again, I would have loved to have seen RTAO instead here. Combined, the optimized settings look like this, mainly high across the board. Unsurprisingly, not too far off from that PlayStation 5 version here. Here, I would love to thank Mohammed, our DF contributor, for these optimized settings, as I was away on holiday when this game came out, and he stepped in to do a lot of the heavy groundwork here. So thank you kindly. With all the optimizations in place, we can see some grand performance wins in any given scene. Like here, a simple scene where optimized settings yield 33% better performance over ultra settings on an RTX 2070 Super at 1440p native with DLAA. You can then further improve upon performance by using DRS or any of the scaling options, which I definitely recommend for any older or slower GPU.